All right.
Okay, cool. All right, let's go. So, hello to the currently 0 viewers, but we'll forget that for now. To a slightly late stream, which is supposed to have nice webcam footage, but for some reason it's not working out. But I'm joined today by 2 very special guests. This stream is going to be more stacked than a deck after a Mallow, to discuss the standard format and for the upcoming European Pokemon tournament, Leipzig. So my guests kind of introduce themselves. So I guess we'll start with Tord.
Hey, my name is Tord, and I'm a long-time player from Norway, and currently only 2-time international champion, and I play a lot of Pokemon.
Yeah, and then Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Schulz from Germany. Have been playing for a long time too, and am currently in the top 4 in Europe.
Also, actually, we couldn't have better European guests for this stream. We have the EU IC winner and the person who won the most recent regional kind of size event in Europe. So if anyone knows the format, it's going to have to be you two guys, right? So on the screen, to make up for the fact that we have no webcam footage, I have a picture of the breakdown of top 64 decks from Memphis. And a few decks kind of surprised everyone a bit. Everyone was expecting Gardevoir, and now we have kind of a slightly different looking format with Lycanroc Zoroark taking the top spot and winning. Buzzwole variants everywhere. So I guess if we kind of start with the Lycanroc Zoroark, where do we think it's going now? I've seen a lot of people starting to play heavy enhanced hammers in lists to try and knock off the very special energy reliant stuff. Do we still think it's going to be one of the top decks to look out for going into Leipzig?
Yeah, definitely. So it's I think one of the 2 best decks, or like one of the 2 best Zoroark decks, and I think Zoroark decks are the best, so it's like one of the 2 best decks, basically.
Tord?
Of course, it will definitely be a threat. It's using the same engine as Zoroark Elizabeth, just some other text choices, and the deck is just really, really strong for some reason.
Well,
You can draw a lot of cards and have much more options than your opponent at every point in the game.
yeah, so I found in testing it's crazy because you so often don't need your supporter to do exactly what you need to do that turn. So
Exactly.
you can end every turn if you have to. You can get really nice plays. But do we think, there's any is it the target on the back? Seeing it is the top deck, do we think it's something it has to adjust for now?
Yeah, of course it has a target on the back, but the cool thing about Zoroark is that it's pretty hard to counter, and since you have different Zoroark versions, you have Colispo, then you have Lysanroc as 2 of the biggest one, they have different weaknesses. So if you counter one of them, you might leave the other one left behind, and it's like just really hard to counter compared to how strong your overall deck will be afterwards. So it's basically not worth it. And if you realize that the deck is super strong, you might as well just play it yourself.
So I wonder what you're playing for Leipzig. So I guess we go on to this kind of the deck that kind of took everyone by surprise. I was testing it for Turin, kind of going, well, it took 2 top 8 spots in London, but it kind of didn't see anywhere near as much hype as Lycanroc Zoroark did, which is kind of the Buzzwole variant, so the Buzzwole Lycanroc deck. Do we think that's still a strong contender, or do we think that people can just throw in a couple of Mewtwo Evos here and there, and that's the end of it?
I think the deck is inherently very strong, so like rock decks, but it has the weakness advantage against those. against the main attackers, so that's basically the merit in deck right now, I think. And it obviously struggles with Mewtwo and Mew, but I think if you play the Zygarde, that's fine, because like even against Gliscopod, the Zygarde is still useful in combination with Lycanroc. And yeah, if you use those Grass Weak attackers a bit more, then I think it's at least 50-50 against both Zorak decks, maybe better. So yeah, the deck makes sense, but it's also like way more inconsistent, and you need to hit Force Max Elixir and everything. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan, but I think it's really good also.
I think Deckwas is very, very strong, but you have some things, some bottlenecks on the deck that's kind of beyond your control. It's like you have a 2 Octillery line, and you need that line in play if you don't want to lose against an N after your first 2 prizes, and you want to take those 2 prizes like on your second turn already. So if you haven't set up an Octillery really, really fast, you might struggle a lot through the whole game. And if you miss your max elixirs, that can be vital. Like the first step is just getting max elixir in your hand, and that can be hard enough sometimes as well. And if you get it and you miss it, it doesn't help. So you both need to hit the max elixir in your hand, and you need to hit the energy. And that's like some random factors I think a lot of high-profile players don't want to take the risk of. But the deck is super, super strong, and when you set up Octillery and hit a couple max elixirs, it's nothing that can beat it, really.
Well, it's one of those, if you roll high, you win, right? It's
consistent, but it's like it misses something, and you can't really fix it with deck building. You just have to draw into it.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest problem I have with it.
Well, because I know a lot of lists have been kind of switching back and forth between playing the Zygarde EX or not. I've found in testing that it makes so many matchups so much better, and it means that sometimes you don't need to rely on having to hit the elixirs as aggressively, because actually its first attack for the single energy is quite a nice poke, but then the 2 attack energy, if you can get 1 strong down, can start doing some nice damage. But that's kind of the only way I've found about it. If you mix in it's the only way to fix missing an elixir.
I don't even think weakness is the biggest problem. It's like, say if you play against Zorak or Spot, they have a way to one-shot all your Pokemon in their deck, right? Especially if they play the Mew as well. They have one-shot on everything. Then you're forced to hit the max elixir. That's your only out. You need to trade an attacker with them every turn. They need 1 energy, and you need more. You need max elixirs. So if you hit the max elixirs and everything goes smoothly, you probably win because you're a little faster. If you don't hit the max elixirs, suddenly they just run over you. So hit the skill elixirs and you're fine, and that's like that's a deck, I feel.
It's high skill deck, right?
Yeah.
I
used to play Speed Dark Race, so I know all about the skill elixirs. It can be super good.
I used to play a lot of Volk. I know exactly the feeling.
Yeah.
Exactly. So going down the list, kind of sticking to what's definitely tier 1, because it's a good discussion to have about maybe the next deck, is so the Gliscopod Zorak, right? You both kind of won fairly large tournaments with it, so I'm guessing you're both big fans of the deck. But where do we think it stands right now with the fact that there's a lot of fighting stuff running around? I guess with the Gliscopod, it kind of deals with it a bit.
Yeah, if Leipzig was tomorrow, I'd definitely play the deck again. Yeah, I don't see many problems with it. It can beat everything almost, except like random mill decks or something. Yeah, the fighting matchups, like the Basu matchup, if the opponent plays like he should, I think it's not easy, but
Depends on
yeah,
the elixirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I find it fun from like I've played that matchup a lot from the Buzzwell side, and every time they put down a mine, be like, it's actually fine. Don't like that doesn't hurt me. Like you just beat
Mine
me
is
other ways.
so bad in the matchup. Like, it just blocks your bench space and does nothing.
Yep.
I think it's fine. Like, you can bench it, but you normally don't want to bridge it for it, but like you can drop it after you bridge it, like as a 4th or 5th Pokemon. But
Thank you,
don't,
like,
you don't need to rush it. I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
I would always rather put down a Zorua, I think. Like, but
yeah, but like if you draw into it, or if your opponent, if you already have 4 Zora benched, you need a mime as well, right?
and you
If you
need
can't get
more
another
imports, or need
Yeah, but
Mewtwo,
you
or need a
like,
free bench space for Lele. Or...
you're gonna get some Zoras knocked out in the early game anyway, so you get some bench space later.
Yeah,
It's
I guess
like
mine is not horrible. But...
all my opponent gets the full strong energy band Lyson Rock combo to the Bruce Regirock to knock out Zorak on the bench. So and kind of don't want to take those 30. That's plus a 180 and then it's knocked out.
Yeah, that can be annoying.
Super annoying.
Yeah. But how? So we think still perfectly strong. Definitely something to pick up and consider.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At
sure.
least, yeah. Cool. Right. So
It's insane.
the other deck that was definitely used to be tier 1, and now I'd argue after Memphis it could be up for a bit more debate, is Gardevoir. You know, so pre-London it was everywhere. Everyone went into London. Well, a lot of people went into London with a look. As long as I don't lose the Gardevoir, I'm fine. Kind of attitude. And now I think everyone's gone, wait, hang on, Zoroark is actually really good as a card. Let's not play the Gardevoir anymore. Do we think it's going to make a comeback? You know, is it something still worth picking up and testing? Or do we think it's probably time just to go, okay, right, that one's done with?
I kind of look at Gardevoir as I look at Greninja. It's super strong, but it only works half the time. And when it doesn't work, it is not good. When it works, you just smash your opponent. But I don't know many players who are satisfied with the 50-50 deck. And it doesn't break as often as Greninja, or sets up only 50-50, but I like to look at it that way because it's stage 2 deck, and there are so many games you just can't control at all.
Yeah, I think it needs to draw too well to actually beat the Zoroark decks. Even though it might seem like a good matchup, but Zoroark can like, always do something to beat it. And yeah, I've never had too many problems with Gardevoir. I don't think it's worth it.
I think that's
it's a good deck, but not good enough and not consistent enough.
Well, the format's moved on from it, I think, right?
And it can still make a comeback if people just don't care about it anymore. Like play the Kabul lists that don't have any counter and all that, and play Volcanion again. It can definitely win tournaments again, but I personally wouldn't pick it up again.
Tor, I think you're going to jump in and say something.
Yeah, but Robin said most of it. So yeah, I think Gardevoir is one of the decks that when you look at the Zoroark matchup, you think, oh, this is easy. I have resistance. He will even struggle to 2-hit knockout me. I can 1-hit knockout him. This will be great. Easy peasy. Matchup is no problem. And that's what everyone told me going into London and during my London run and even after weeks after. And now suddenly people are like, you know what? Zoroark kind of beats Gardevoir, right? Like, you know, whatever.
It's just like it just does things so much faster than Gardevoir can ever hope to, and it just means that by the time Gardevoir gets to have a turn and actually do something, it's way too late. It's...
I'm convinced, and all this was, but
yeah. Okay, so I don't think there's anything else I'd consider tier 1 right now that's worth mentioning. So I think Joe was just like. So we might have another person joining us in a second. Joe's just
ready.
Well, I don't know. He's just sent me a message on the Facebook we were using to set it up. So If either of you have him added and see him online, please feel free to add him to the call.
I don't have him.
Me neither.
Okay, in that case, he's going to have to add me. We'll see what happens. Because we're kind of getting onto more Joe's kind of style of things. He doesn't like playing the best deck in format, right? So we can move on to the tier 2 kind of stuff. So I've got top of tier 2 on my list, and is one that kind of did best in Memphis is Greninja. It's the same deck it's always been, as far as I'm concerned. I hate losing to it because I only lose to it because people actually hit all their combo pieces. Whenever I play it, that never happens. And that's basically how I feel about Greninja, I guess. Do either of you have any particularly strong feelings and things you'd like to add?
Oh, where to start? Oh, go first, Robin.
I actually don't hate Greninja, but it's weird. I mean, it has a bunch of good matchups, like against Zork Lycanroc, it should mostly win. And it's Greninja, everyone knows. Just like the games are not really in your control because like so much can go wrong and you can't really do anything to stop that. You can price some Frogadier like with an important Greninja, and then suddenly the game goes out of control. And I've considered playing Greninja a lot of times, but have never actually done it. And I think that means something. I don't think I'd ever play Greninja and wouldn't advise anyone to do so, but I can also see why people pick it. So it does make some sense.
Tord, I know you've probably spoken about Greninja before on other things you've been involved with. Do you have anything else you'd like to? Anything new?
I don't see any logic or any reasoning or any sense in playing Greninja for any event ever whatsoever. Don't do it. It's not a good deck. Stay away. It's not good. Finish.
So actually, the thing I find with Greninja, right? So you two are two players who are right at the top of the game, winning tournaments, and like consistently performing well. From a player, from my point of view, as a player who's kind of developing and hoping to become a good player, I can see the idea of Greninja of you get, basically free wins, right? You every now and again, when you do hit things, you can beat anyone in front of you.
Yes.
And from the kind of not so good player point of view, yes, the games are never in your control, but if you're not that great a player, maybe they were never in your control in the first place.
It's like try to look at it from the other perspective. Yes, you can beat anyone in front of you, no matter how good they are.
But you could lose to them
too.
But
you can also lose to anyone in front of you,
yep.
No matter how bad they are, right?
Yep.
So would you take that kind of risk? And it's like you start with a 50-50 against yourself.
Well, I've already decided I'm not playing it ever again, and so that's fine. But
if you go through, if you don't lose to yourself, then you have to start beating your opponent, right? And then you have to start beating the matchup he's playing and hope he doesn't play Giratina. So if your opponent has a bad matchup and he doesn't want to lose to you, he can play Giratina attack, and you have to pray he doesn't play it. And if he has a good matchup, he doesn't care for the Giratina attack, but then you still don't have a fun time. You're still going to lose, right? And this is just if you don't lose to yourself in the first place.
Right.
So I will not recommend Greninja.
Yeah,
I think the Giratina is an important point because like
it's
everyone who has a bad matchup could in theory just put it in, and especially in like Zorak decks, you can Zork Lycanroc, you can just put in a Giratina for relatively free and then discard it whenever you don't need it. So it's not that bad of an addition. So yeah, Greninja. When Greninja seems to be good, people will just put in Giratina, and then they beat you again. So.
All right. So before we go on to the next deck, I'm just going to quickly try and add Joe because he's realised that because we were all on EU time, he had his time entirely wrong. So I'm guessing that's kind of rare for him to actually be the odd one out time zone wise, right?
Let's see in that picture.
So we'll find out if he can add himself to the call. Because he should be able to do so. So I've also seen a lot of people talking about, and I guess we can start talking about it because I know Joe played it.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late.
It's the wrong time zone, man.
Yeah, sorry. You should have said something. I've just been like building decks in my room.
So we're about to bring on something that I know you tested on the stream the other day, Joe, because we just talked about Greninja and the meme that is Greninja Zoroark.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that is in any way better than normal Greninja, and is it anything other than a big joke? I haven't tested it. I missed most of the stream.
I think it's maybe better than Decidueye Zoroark. I think Shadow Stitching is insane right now. That's the sort of thing that you build around. But it still seems pretty meme tier to me. I mean, there's a lot of greed in the list. No field blowers makes you vulnerable to like so many things. And it's a tight list as well. Like you can't actually fit in field blowers because
So
you're already...
just fold if your opponent places a menu.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great.
It's definitely meme tier still, but there are games you just cheese because you got the rare candy turn 2, and it's like, well, decks do just fold to Shadow Stitching a lot at the moment, so that's like the selling point of the deck.
Okay, right. So we're going to stick with our tier 2 discussion. A deck that I know a lot of people are high on just because of its ability to take consistent one-hit KOs. It's one of the few decks that can take one-hit KOs regularly against the likes of Zoroark to stop the Acerola plays. Is the likes of Volcanion through Steam Ups. And especially now with the Gardevoir kind of presence dropping out of the format a lot, or it should be, because it's just not having the results. Do we think Volcanion is in a good place? We'll start with Tord.
No, not really. And the argument that it beats Zoroark is wrong, inherently wrong, I think, because they still have so many tools to beat you down.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do what they should do, and the big secret here is you charge the attackers with energy every single turn. If you do that, you will win basically every time, I feel like. I think I have such an insane win rate against Volcanion, it's not even funny. And yeah, and the argument that you should play Volcanion because you can stop your opponent's Acerola loop. Like, it's still super hard to take knockouts on Zoroark with Volcanion, even though you have the possibility to do it. You either need like a triple steam up or a double steam up with Turtonator. That's a lot of energies. You need them in play and in hand and everywhere, and I know it just feels super hard.
Yeah, I think it's hard for Volcanion decks to draw like the last two prizes against Zoroark decks. So you just end them and have 210 HP, and then they with a KO, and then Zoroark basically wins already. And also the Lycanroc is super good against Volcanion. Like, Dangerous Rock, one-hit KOs everything, and ability is great. And even Golisopod has a lot of tools to deal with Volcanion. So, I mean, in theory, Volcanion should be fine against Zoroark decks, but in practice, it just like doesn't work out like it should, I feel like.
Joe?
That's pretty interesting. I think my win rate with Volk is definitely above 60% against both Zoroark builds. I've been testing Sushi Volcanion playing the 2 to artillery really helps mitigate the sort of last 2 prize issue that Robin mentioned. I've also gone from Fury Belts to choice bands, so like Tord was saying, it's a lot less carbs to hit the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I took it to a League Cup and destroyed all the Zoroarks I faced. And it's been what I was playing on stream for the last like 2 or 3 weeks almost. And it does feast on Zoroarks, in my opinion. There are other issues with Volcanion, of course. But I think that's the main selling point for me. I think it's in a better place than it has been. Gardevoir's on the decline. Garbodor's, in a precarious spot. I think it's in a good spot at the moment, but you just need to find the right partner for Garb at the moment. Not enough people are sort of finding it yet. So I think Volk's able to just scheme up and hit KO and do what it wants to do. And I think alongside Artillery, it's a lot safer than like previous builds of Volk. So I think it's in a decent spot.
Mm-hmm. So there was another deck I wanted to talk about on the tier 2 list, but I actually want to jump off there because Joe's brought it up really nicely, of Garbodor. So now basically everybody in the format has gone, hey look, there's no Garb, quick, throw in as many items as I can for consistency. You have decks that are now running elixirs regularly, which, whilst Garb was a big thing, that could be for dead cards, right? So do we think, I'm guessing we're all kind of in agreement that Garb's in a pretty good place right now. People aren't playing as many field blowers, so you can get the Garbotoxins online and they stick. You can get things like really nice easy Trash Launch damage. So any thoughts on best partners or the best ways to kind of go about building with Garbodor right now?
If I was playing Garbodor, I'd go with Celesteela Drampa version that my brother Philip played a lot. I think the deck's pretty good right now because both Garbodors are insane. Obviously, like Trash Lance on Garbotoxin, or like as good as like better than ever almost. But like the first problem with it is that games with Garbodor are always a lot more random than with Zoroark because you have a Garbotoxin and then you rely on N a lot and you can easily dead draw, your opponent can dead draw, and you can't really control that. And yeah, the Zoroark Galistopod matchup is always unfavorable. Like it feels like no matter what you do. Although with like the parallel cities and like it's certainly very winnable, but like playing Zoroark just feels so much better than playing Garbodor.
So we have Tord, who is kind of credited for basically inventing, or at least piloting the Drampagarb deck to quite a lot of success. Would you be considering picking up Garbodor again?
It's still one of my pet decks, of course, but I feel that the strategy behind Garb is still really good, but I feel that hackers in Garbodor trade very badly in the current format. And the main issue I have with it is that it can't beat an Acerola loop from your opponent. Mm-hmm. Acerola is a big problem for Garbodor. And you can throw in Acerola yourself and try to do the same thing. I actually thought that was a pretty good idea, but it was only okay. And as Robin said, games are super random because with such small hands, like you have to play the game normal again. You can't play with 15 card hands every turn like with Zoroark. Mm-hmm. You have to rely on those few cards you get, and if they are bad, you lose. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get a Sycamore and your opponent gets a Sycamore, and you're stuck, and your opponent just continues slamming down cards, you can't win. So that's my biggest issue with Garbodor right now. But it's obviously very good, but very random, as Robin said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely say the same. One thing I'm curious about is why Celesteela's like good right now, Robin. I got it like a few weeks ago when there was still Guardi around, but is it good enough like on its own just to keep up?
Yeah, it's surprisingly useful even against non-Guardi decks. Like the fighting resistance is really nice. It's basically it's solid against Buzzwole, and like it can 2-hit KO stuff, and GX attack is sometimes useful, but it's not great. You usually use Drampa more, but I think Celesteela is still good, and I would still play 2 even with not that much Gardevoir. And Gardevoir can come back at any moment, basically. So yeah. And to what Todd mentioned with the Acerola loop thing, so the strategy against Zorak is basically running them out of resources and not drawing 6 prizes quicker than them anymore. Because you just usually Righteous Edge, Peril City, and then N, and it's really hard for them to draw into the double puzzle to get back their resources, and then they usually will have to discard a lot of items, and then at some point you just get them with Treasure Lands and one-hit KO. But if they are able to use their Goliath support and draw their basic grass energy and then draw the Acerola at the right time, there's not a whole lot you can do, because Peril City doesn't even hurt their Goliath support. So,
Or even just knock out your Carbotoxin and you suddenly don't have anything to stop them. And they just draw 6 cards every turn, and the game is over.
If you're not able to keep up the Garbotoxin, then you lose. I think the Zorak Goliath support is the hardest matchup, still for sure. But other Zorak decks are a lot easier.
Yeah.
For example,
it's like really comfortable playing 4 Fiblower at London. That was pretty cool. Wish I faced more Garbodor decks.
So I'm actually going to a cup on Sunday, and I'm going to be taking Buzzwole Garb, and it's going to be playing 10 draw supporters and a 3/3 Toxin line. Because I want to get it down turn 2, and I want it to not get Guzma KO'd. I want to re-establish it and have it playing 9 tools. I'm going super basic, and it's just Buzzwole, Elixirs. I've got it all in there, but it's just super like straightforward in what I'm trying to do. Fighting is good. And it gets around the criticism of Acerola looping you. And I mean, there are some greedy Zoroarks out there who have gone down to like 2 or 3 Field Blowers and 1 or 2 Sycamores, and you can punish that like pretty easily, I think. So that's what I'm going to be taking to a cup this weekend, see how it goes. I've essentially got 3 cups before Leipzig, and I'm going to be experimenting basically a few Buzzwole variants. I think that's where I'm sat right now, because I'm pretty certain that he's really good, and it's whether I go Garbodor route or go Artillery and all that jazz.
Artillery, Lycanroc. I've actually been testing Buzzwole Garb this week, and I much prefer the Lycanroc build.
Yeah, I mean, drawing cards is always good, right?
Yeah.
And there are times where they randomly have the Field Blower, and you feel like you've just done nothing, wasted your game plan essentially. But I think having a high physical draw support account is probably the only counterbalance you can have as a counter argument, but that's really it. And I'm certain that Garbodor's like good in the format right now, just because lists are getting to a point of greed where they just get punished more often than get out of it.
So much greed.
Yep, there's a lot of greed right now.
Yeah, but this is like top of my list for testing for Leipzig so far, and I think is on a lot of people's list is how do I make Garbodor good? Because there will be a lot of people who just kind of not so much forget about it, but don't give it the kind of credit it deserves. So it's definitely worth.
I mean, most people just think that Zoroark shuts out Garb, which it kind of did, but if people just go greedier, it doesn't anymore. So it did when it played 4 Field Blowers and 3 Sycamores, but not so much now, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to jump back into the tier 2 thing. So I'd argue this isn't tier 2, but it's been added to my list, so there it is. It's Vikabulu. So the one-hit KO. Toad's just throwing up the X. It was like, no, we're not talking about this.
We're out.
So I actually really dislike the deck. It's got all the problems of being a stage 2 deck, but also having a stage 1 that's reliant on you getting the stage 2, so it's not even a good stage. It just doesn't do anything other than take one-hit KOs. I'm not a big fan. I know Joe has tested it with Octillery. Robin, have you had much experience playing Bulu recently, or?
No, tested it a lot when it was released, but not so much in the past month or so.
Yeah, I remember being at Birmingham when it just came out, and it was just like, it hadn't even come out in the UK, and I was just walking around the room going, oh, this is not fun. Looking at all the people playing Bulu, that was not great. So, Joe, as the only person who's actually played it recently and doesn't hate it, what have you got for...
I don't like the deck. I've played enough of it to know that I'm pretty sure it's not top tier. Tier 2 is, like, I guess, generous. It comes with consistency issues. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues right now is just that the builds floating around are just wild, to be honest. There's just some, like, big errors going on from people that just don't make mathematical sense. Like, I know Kikabulu is, like, somewhat of a meme for not playing Bridget, but it just makes normal sense to play Bridget in a deck that's a stage 2. There's the debate around Oranguru and Octillery. I personally like Octillery just for a safety net and the fact that there is less Garbodor. I think the only selling point you can see really of Vikabulu is that it does just hit pretty hard, and that's hard to deal with. I think the Lycanroc builds, even Zoro Lycanroc, can be fine against it just by making sure you gust up the most important threats on their board. Buzzwole Lycanroc's pretty good against it. Buzzwole Garb's obviously good against it. Volk is like 50-50. I think the only thing you're really trying to target is Zoropod, and even then they can just go first, and then they can be targeting certain things and making it hard for the Bulu player to win. And on top of all of that, it can miss their turn 2 candy, and then their win percentage drops by like 50%, like across the board. So you've got to hit your turn 2 Vikavolt to be in the game against a lot of these decks in the first place.
And even then...
and that's the big issue, yeah.
Yeah, it's... I don't know why someone's put that on my list, but there it is.
Well, it's getting way too much respect in cups right now. I feel like so many people are just bringing it for fun times. And
yeah.
I don't think people actually take it to regionals. Like, it just... People have got to learn that it's probably not consistent enough in a format that is playing some of the most consistent decks we've seen in the last, like, 3 years, basically. So,
But, like, honestly, Vikavolt Bulu looks like the dream of decks because everything just seems so perfect. Your main attacker doesn't have weakness. Your main attacker can heal itself, and your main attacker can knock out mostly anything in the format. It just looks perfect, but it doesn't work. That's the problem. Just doesn't work, and it has so many problems, so many consistency problems, and that's one of the big factors I think people like to ignore when looking at decks. I think that's people's biggest flaw, and that's what made Gardevoir so popular as well. I think people don't look at the consistency factor when they look at the deck strength.
Well, so taking a slight step away from the kind of the deck discussion itself, but kind of consistency and how important that is. So I think my last cup was best of 1 that I played, and I know the one Joe's going to this weekend, I think is also best of 1, right?
Best of 1.
And
yeah.
it completely changes what decks I'd even think about playing, right? Because you can't afford to miss a thing turn 2, because then you've lost the game, and at which point you might not make cut. And that can happen round 1. It doesn't matter. So when going to a regional, so if best of 1, 5 rounds is a time when you want to take the most consistent deck you physically have access to. A regional's the same, right? Like, people think, oh, you have more rounds, you can make it up. But do you all think that you still wind up playing the most consistent thing you physically can?
For sure, every time. There's no question.
Oh, sorry, I need to get the door. Hold on. Give me a second.
So yeah, like, it's still consistency wins, right?
I would just always play the deck I think is best, no matter if it's best of 1 or best of 3. and that's usually a consistent deck. Yeah, because consistent decks give me the highest win percentage, I'd say, and so don't really see much reason to play like those high roll decks instead, like Vikabulu or I don't know.
Metagross.
This was a mistake.
I have them in my binder because no one wants to take them off me anymore.
Best of one is the best time to play the high roll decks because you have to get lucky less games. Ah.
So
Genius.
on the thing of like never wanting to play the high roll decks, again, going discussion earlier on for Red Greninja, is that from an experienced player point of view, a good player, you know that if you play the most consistent deck, you can sit across the table from someone, and you can probably beat them regardless of the matchup because you know you're the better player. I understand why people might be drawn to things like Vikabulu and Greninja when they're maybe trying to be better, trying to learn the game better and trying to improve, but actually aren't there yet because it means that they can still get free wins occasionally when they do high roll.
I think that's the best time to be playing those sorts of decks when you're competent at the game but not good enough to maybe beat the better players who are around you. You can just let variance win those matchups where skill couldn't get you there. So I think there's a category of players who should be going for these sorts of decks. It's just you won't always see the very best players playing these archetypes.
That's a very good point. Completely agree. Like it's great that stage 2 decks and these kind of high roll decks exist because you can play them if you don't have the time to put into testing or you don't feel comfortable enough playing something else. Like you actually have to play your way around people. So if you don't feel comfortable, you can just pick up a big high roll deck and you can still win the tournament. That's awesome. The dream is still alive.
So yeah, it's a weird thing to have in this game in that you can pick up a deck that just kind of rolls over things because a bit of luck means that happens. So it's kind of evens the playing field, which is nice. So has anyone got anything else that's tier 2-ish? So Volcanion, Greninja, Vikabulu. I'm probably missing quite a lot off this list. So Valley Metals has disappeared along with Guardy. So
I guess Golisopod, Garbodor. I haven't mentioned that yet.
No, I don't think we've discussed that, no. So that's the other one we could talk about.
I guess Golisopod, Garbodor is like most of what we said about Garbodor applies to Golisopod as well. And Golisopod needs to draw even more stuff to keep going. But when it works, it's pretty good. Not sure if I like the not playing Trashlands like Azul did, because I think Trashlands is so important. If I'm playing against the deck with Zorak, then the trying to not play down 10 items or something is like the most difficult part almost, and the enhanced hammers are like annoying, but alright. I'll probably still play Trashlands in every Garbodor deck ever. I think Cut's way too good.
Yeah, it just means that you can punish any form of overextension from your opponent, right? If they need to dig too hard to find AP, so they get a bit greedy, that's it.
Also just punishes awkward draws. The opponent can't always play around getting items into their discard pile. But if you don't play Trashlands, then they don't even need to care, and it makes it a lot easier for them.
One of the weirdest things I think seeing Azul's second place list was that he made space for enhanced hammers. I think
it was crazy.
Although they're great right now, they're not draw cards and they're not consistency cards, and you're quite greedy with 2 stage 2s already. 2 stage 1s, and you need to always have tools and always have your Acerolas and Guzmas. I think I had a look at Golisopod, Garbodor, and basically I went back to like really early lists, like almost just post Worlds, those sorts of lists, just maxing out all your supporters and just trying to get it going. Just don't worry about hitting E-hammers and getting big swing turns. Just let the Ace of Rollers get you there, basically, and grind people out. But again, I've always been a big fan of just going as simplistic as possible and just let your strategy actually get going. And I think that's what I would go for again with Glycepod, maybe even going up to like 4 Trubbish and a 2-2 split all over again of Garbodors. I think it's probably worth it right now for me.
Joe said the format is pretty skillful since Azul is an insanely good player, and he managed to get there with 4 hammer as well. So, just big creds to him.
Yeah. Okay, so it was mentioned kind of with these 4 E-hammer lists, like are there other decks that can find the space? Probably not, right? Like again, unless you're playing Zoroark. Yeah, so this is the thing. Unless you're playing Mill, you shouldn't bother with playing many hammer at all.
I like 1 or 2 in puzzle lists just because they can be. I mean, they're only 2 spaces, but they could be enough to win certain matchups if you want to reuse them in the important matches. But I think in non-puzzle lists, it doesn't make as much sense, unless, of course, you're a Mill deck.
I think they are most effective in Garbodor decks right now, like, aside from the puzzle decks where you, of course, like play 2, basically. In Drampa, you don't need them because you have Righteous Edge, but I think I'd play them in any other Garbodor deck right now. Just to beat Zoroark, basically. You need the E-Hammer and to disrupt them.
Okay, so if we can now moving on to the slightly more out there decks, that we've already had Vikabulu, so maybe we're not going that far. We have Decidueye Zoroark. So I actually played it at my last cup. I think I play it fairly well, and I was pretty confident going into the day. And about halfway through, I had a game where I went Rowlet pass, and at that point, I decided the deck is no longer for me. It's changed entirely what I was going to play for Turin. So where do we think, does that have a space in the meta now? Is it something that's worth looking into, testing, ready for Leipzig?
I think it's not good. I think if you play Zoroark, you need something to counter Lycanroc, like Gliscopod, or play Lycanroc yourself, and the Decidueye just kind of loses to that. Also, it's stage 2, obviously, so it's inherently less consistent than other Zoroark decks. I don't really see a reason to play it over Lycanroc or Gliscopod.
Joe, Tord, any particular thoughts?
Tord, do you want to go?
And the Decidueye Zoroark has a 1-card counter. That card is Parallel City, and that card is played. So, and you play a stage 2 in, like, you want to play a Zoroark deck, so you play a consistent version. You want to play a consistent deck, right? And you decide to throw in a stage 2 in your Zoroark deck, completely messing up your consistency. It doesn't make sense at all to me. And I think the other options are a lot stronger.
Yeah, I think the biggest point is Parallel. I think people are going to be playing, even in their own Zoroark lists, to like counter mirror matches. Parallel goes in, and it could just destroy Decidueye Zoroark like way more than any other deck. And I mean, it's good against all the Zoroark variants in general, but it's so good against Decidueye Zoroark, it's absurd. The only real selling point when Decidueye Zoroark was becoming a thing was like Devolve is pretty good. Still has that going for it, but as Tord said, you're trying to get up multiple throughout the game, and even just trying to weave in the Espeon turn and stuff can be awkward. So
yeah,
there's a lot of awkwardness going on with the deck.
I actually went after long discussions with my testing partner. We basically came to the conclusion that Espeon EX doesn't belong in that deck anymore because that's just too slow. Like, you can actually play it more as a one-hit KO deck where you set up 3 Decidueye, your 150 from your Zoroark means that you're actually one-shotting a lot of stuff. So if you build more for that side of things, that was the list that actually kind of worked for me quite nicely. So if you wait for that side as opposed to just kind of going kind of slow, that's when I think it's workable, but it still has a lot of problems.
I kind of tried
3
both sides.
Decidueye, you win anyway.
Yeah, 3 Decidueye is like
the dream.
Always good.
That can't be your main strategy even, because you're not gonna set up 3 dice. That's not happening.
Especially in Lycanroc meta, they'll target birds quite quickly if they need to.
I mean, if your opponent drop passes for 4 turns, of course you can set up 3 dice, but they're not gonna let you.
To be fair, I had a lot of success with that testing against Gardevoir, so that's probably why.
It was one of the best matchups for the deck.
Yep.
Unless they play parallel.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, so actually, that's actually the next point. So parallel obviously is very, very good right now. Like, do we think that a lot of decks? So most decks should be playing 1 or 2 now, right? Because it helps against the Zoroark matchups. Are there many decks do you think wouldn't bother playing parallel?
Bolt, Greninja, Pikachu.
So all the
There's
tier
a lot
2
of decks,
stuff, yeah.
All the tier 2 stuff needs all the
Canyon.
stuff to get it working, basically. So you don't have the space for the parallel. But I think for like mirror matches, for other Zoroark variants is a good card. Buzzwole, Lycanroc, we saw Mahone play 2 copies, even with Brooklet Hills also in his list. So I think it makes sense in those sorts of matches, in those sorts of decks. Garbodor variants can always play it. And Gardevoir can also play it as well. So there'll be a handful. Even mill decks start teching it because they have Lusamine anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it makes sense in your deck and just isn't totally like counterintuitive, then you should probably play parallel.
It's just like, is it at the point now where if you know you're playing a deck that could work with parallel, it's one of the first cards you put down on the list, right? Of going, I probably want at least one.
I wouldn't just throw it in, but like you can definitely consider it for most decks, but I don't think it makes the cut at all of them in your final list.
I think it's like the 61st card in Zoropod right now.
Yeah, probably.
I recently tried out Mahone's list with the 2 parallel 2 Brooklet. It's so good. It seems really counterintuitive if like if I can parallel you down. Yes, my Lycanroc's not as good anymore, but it doesn't matter. You win anyway. Like I've really enjoyed that as a deck. So now continuing on to our path of weird stuff and decks that probably aren't worth talking about, but they're on my list. The mill. So a lot of decks right now are going to kind of a handful of special energy. So a lot of decks maybe running only special energy. So do we think that decks that can exploit that by playing things like the Circuitry or by playing E-Hammers and Energy Denial are in the right... is this the time for mill? I mean, it was Malmo last year, I believe, which Quad Lapras won. So is it just January formats mean play mill?
I don't think these mill decks are ever really good because there's always a bunch of matchups that you can't win, basically. If you play against the Canyon or Greninja or, I don't know, there's always decks that you just lose against, and they're good against the Zoroark Golisopod, but even against the Zoroark Lycanroc, it has a lot more options against, like for example, the Wishy-Washy Hoopa mill deck, like we saw on the Memphis stream, like Prambat just destroyed that quickly. And I think when mill decks do well, it's oftentimes because people don't play against them correctly, and not that they are really that good. I wouldn't play mill, but they certainly have their good matchups, and if they hit a lot of them, then the deck can do well. But it's not a deck I would ever play or consider playing even.
Yeah, I could just see Todd's face here. It's just kind of like, oh, mill. None of this.
I think I almost consider Grenin now before mill, honestly.
Wow.
That's mad. I think Wishy-Washy Hooper has some legs right now. I don't think it's ever going to be great, but it can pretty handily tackle the top tier stuff. Buzzwole Lycanroc, Zoro Lycanroc, and Golisopod Zoroark. I think it does really well against those decks. The Lusamine gives it a lot of fuel from like the few games I've had with the deck, you have like 3 turns of stuff to do just from every Lusamine you play. So it's slow, it's boring, it's dull. People should play better against it than they do, and that can sometimes skew your results with the deck. I don't know. I need to play against more like very good players with Mill to see how useful it is, but there are decks that just don't have good answers to like Xurkitree specifically right now in the meta. I think you need to play Wobbuffets if you want to have a chance against Volk and Vikabulu, otherwise you'll get stomped. And you need to play Giratina Break as well for Greninja. You've got to play all sorts of stupid stuff, but you're already playing a stupid deck, so...
Also, the deck has just so many awkward hands.
Yeah, the deck really
You
does.
drew a starting hand of 7 cards, and you're like, oh man, I hope I don't get benched in the next 3 rounds.
Yeah, that's the story of Quad Lapras for me in Brazil. Just getting donked.
That deck at least
Rayquaza
has some draws,
donking
right?
that. Yeah, but I got donked by Rays every time.
That was just Ray, though, right?
Yeah, just Ray things.
Yeah. So that's the end of things on my list. But what we're going to do now is I've thrown it open to the chat for a kind of Q&A. So we have first questions from my captain. I'm guessing this is aimed at Joe. Where does Xerneas Break fall in the current tier list? Well, I'm going to jump in and say, well, we've just discussed how good Parallel City is right now. Well,
Parallel's good, Field Blower's good, E-Hammer's good. These are all issues for Xerneas Break, like big issues. I've tried to go down a route of playing 4 EXP share and no special energy to play around E-Hammer. They get Field Blower away, you lose. If you go down a high special energy count, they get E-Hammered away, you lose. So, and then Parallel as well is always going to be a problem. I think the consistency of Xerneas Break's the only thing keeping it like together. But there are lots of techs around in like all sorts of decks that can really slow you down a bit. It's been doing well in UK Cups right now, but it's just sort of like, it's a deck that was sort of born in the UK and people just sort of like playing it more here for some reason. But I don't think it's like top tier at the moment. Definitely not top tier, like maybe bottom of tier 2.
Yeah, I actually tested the deck a bit after London, thinking, well, it should be fine against Zoopod, right? And against Gardevoir without Sylveon, but no, it wasn't. Like Gardevoir, even the Max Potion builds still beat it just because of the 1 Parallel City. And then against Zorak, they had like Coco, could like set up your Xerneas for KOs and enhance time by your special energy away. And I also tried out without special energy, but then like I just missed the extra 20 from DC or counter energy, and it just wasn't great. And don't think I'll ever touch the deck again.
I bought all the pieces thinking, oh, I'll play it at some point, and I've never actually picked it up to go, this is the time. It's just... It looks very shiny, but that's all it's got going for it, as far as I'm concerned right now.
Well, when me, Tamao, and Luke aren't playing the deck, you shouldn't play it.
Yeah. Well, so this is the thing. So like, I think Tamao played it at London, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like so.
Wait, did he? No, he played Gardevoir.
In that case, did he? I remember walking past him, seeing Fairy Energy, and I was like, I can't remember. I saw the Fairy Energy, and I was like, really now? But there we go.
Yeah, he may have. I think it may have been London, but I think that was just because like there was no other deck he liked.
Yeah. So, next questions. So we're all going to Leipzig, right? So, is everyone going to Leipzig? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this next question is probably not something that we're able to answer because I've been busy testing this format. But we had OJ Armstrong has asked, what's the best deck that's going to come out of the new set? What do we honestly think is the best set? I have a pet like for Glaceon at the minute. I'm really like the idea behind Glaceon, and something I want to sit down to try and work on is Glaceon Decidueye. Because I just see a nice synergy. I don't think it's necessarily the best deck coming out of the set, but I like the idea of being able to kind of slow your opponent down, build up a nice big board with a couple of Decidueyes whilst they are slowed down. But then you also get into a nice situation of, with your 90-30 snipes and the Decidueye pings, you actually get some really good damage output. The GX attack works with it nicely. It's kind of it's got a lot of nice things working for it. Other than the fact that it is a stage 1 and 2 deck, so has consistency issues.
So I've put some thought into the new format, and I also really like Glaceon, mostly just because it's a Zora counter, basically. It blocks trade pretty consistently, and that's great. And you also have like Cyrus, can put them at 2 bench, and then 2-hit KO with Zorak, and just a straight Glaceon deck should be fine against Zorak decks. Might actually be a good counter, so I don't know. I will look into that. Like playing it, I would just play straight Glaceon with just some Lele and maybe some other big water attacker. But, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it really needs anything more. Maybe some disruption cards, E-hammers, of course. And yeah, that's it. Also thought about obviously the Magnezone Necrozma deck. It's pretty strong. It's like Bulu, but then better, but it's still a high roller deck.
2.0.
Yeah.
Bulu 2.0.
I've tested that, and I found that it was like Bulu, but better, but also worse at the same time. Because you need all the energy in your hand, which means that you get really awkward turns where you have to hit exactly an energy from hand and the Mount Coronet to be able to hit everything. It was really strange.
Yeah, it's pretty high roller. I think the only reason it works is because Dialga has clock up, so you can bridge it and clock up and just clock up until you get a good hand.
And I wouldn't even play Dialga in it, probably.
You have to play Dialga. 2 turns.
Then
You
the
take 2
Necrozma
turns,
GX
Robin. How is 2 turns not good?
You already need the Necrozma's GX attack, I feel like. Just doing 250 without discard.
Yeah, but this is the thing. So you turn 1 Bridget and you try clocking up so you can get your Candy combo. Either they do deal with Dialga, then you can do your response KO and still be fine, or they don't and you can take 2 turns.
I mean, you
clock
can
up is
also-
like so important for the deck.
Can't you just use a load on Vulpix or something instead? I know,
Yeah,
because
I mean,
it just feels like
sure.
so much to actually do something with the Dialga. Like, not only do you need 5 energy, but also choice band, and you don't even want to play a lot of choice band, I think. And then probably Guzmas to be most effective, and you also don't want to play a bunch of Guzma, like just maybe a couple.
But, like, the worst case scenario for taking 2 turns is like being able to draw a bunch of cards, being able to artillery all over again, being able to use your stadium for a second time, so it's like a free fisherman. You can like you can Guzma, you can do all sorts. Like, you can think of the GX attack as doing the 250 damage because you can do 150 and then 80 again to the active. So like you're getting the same amount of damage, but you're also just doing all the other stuff you want to in your turn. So like worst case scenario, it's still probably better than Necrozma's GX attack.
Yeah,
Two
maybe
more energy though.
I guess with Necrozma you can actually use the GX attack on something third turn already, even if you don't draw into that many energy, and then blow something up, and next turn just attach another energy and take number 2 prizes. You can even, if you go first, you attach an energy, then turn 2, you attach another energy, you don't even need a Magnezone, and you already have a response on your board, and then the opponent can either kill like a Magnemite or something, or but he basically needs to deal with Necrozma and can't do anything else because you already have like your 2 energy on there. And I don't know, I just feel like the GX attack of Necrozma will be more important than it seems. So and the Alga is like, it makes the deck even more like it's like not a consistent strategy to use the GX attack, I think. But yeah, the skipping turns effect when it works is of course maybe the most broken GX attack we have right now. But yeah, I think it might not be worth it. But I haven't played it a lot, of course, so might be wrong. I don't know.
That's the thing. What I feel, people are really like devaluing that GX attack because they always think you need to have choice band Guzma for it to be worthwhile. But if you think about it as like a free 150, just like the old Raichu level X almost, where you just get free damage, and at the very least you can just hit 80 and finish off the thing you hit in the active, but you also get to, you know, set up your board for an extra turn. It's like so good to have that extra turn for no response from the opponent. And then there will be those there are those games where it does go off and obviously it just carries you no matter what.
Yeah, but then you also have like the 5 energy on your Dialga that just does nothing.
I mean,
You can always...
there are still issues here. There are still issues with the deck. Don't worry. I agree. I may not be high rolling it myself in Malmo, but I want someone to.
I would take an extra turn every time, but that's mainly because I look at the deck as a league cup deck or league challenge, even a league deck, not a tournament deck, a league deck.
I think it will be good against Glaceon.
Oh yeah.
Also good against Zorak Golisopod, probably. I think it's bad against Zorak Lycanroc, but good against Zorak Golisopod, probably. So
still quite bad against Buzzwole builds if they play the free retreater. So there's definitely issues there, and like auto loses Greninja, so there's definitely like big issues, of course. I think the Turbo Metals could be a good deck for the future. Just like Robin said, the GX attack of Duskmane is actually like really good. So you can just sit there trying to build up the board, and then when they eventually have to deal with one of your guys, you can just come in and swing, and then it likely doesn't get knocked out, especially if you play Fury Belts. Then you attach one more energy and take another big blow up. It's just like a simple concept that we've seen previously. I think that definitely has less vulnerabilities than the Magnezone build, but still has like the raw output, which I think is really appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the deck it could be good with just next elixirs and the Prism Solgaleo and the Necrozma Solgaleo, and I guess some Registeel, and yeah, that seems decent.
So, Todd, have you had much time to have a look at the next set, and if have you found anything you particularly like from it?
I like Glaceon as a series something, and I liked Mind Zone and Extra Turn as a fancies.
Mm-hmm.
And it can still be good though, but it'd probably be another high roll deck.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Glaceon looks pretty cool. It isn't as broken as I think people want it to be, because it only blocks GX and EX, so you can't block Octillery, can't block Greninja, and yeah, so there are a lot of things you can't block that are pretty important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you think ability lock, those are big things that are really good to block, but Glaceon doesn't block them. So Glaceon doesn't have the best damage output, and I can see Glaceon having troubles with people attacking him with a DC. Like everyone plays Lele, so slap a DC on a Lele, hit 100, and play an Ace Roll next turn, and do the same again, and Glaceon is gone. And you did nothing. And it took your opponent one DC and one Ace Roll to do this, 100% save, and you could not interact with him at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Flagrant red card. See you later.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, I like the next set, but I don't think like Glaceon's the only thing I'm particularly excited for. Leafeon looks cool because I like Leafeon as a Pokemon, so I'm just kind of excited for that. And I also like the idea of being able to go Bridget, Grass Energy. Here are 3 stage 1s, which is kind of nice.
I think one of the strongest cards is just Cynthia being put into Greninja. Giving it 4 more good supporters scares me. I mean, it's still Greninja, but it's definitely a notable improvement.
I was going if I had the money to go to Malmo, and I so nearly was going to Malmo. I was going to pick it up. I was just going to go, right, okay, I own the cards. It's time. Let's just use them once so I can pretend that I got value out of them. And just try and high roll it with the extra supporters. But so I think the next question, I'm going to skip the one about asking about Crabominable, because we all know. Would everyone consider adding Parallel City and Evo Soda to Zoropod? And how do you approach the Zoroark matchup? Anyone wanna?
Yeah, Evo Soda definitely. I think the one of Evo Soda should be stable in Zoropod. And Parallel City is like in my terrain list. I played the Floatstone. That slot could be a Parallel City, but Yeah, Floatstone helps against Lycanroc decks and like in some random situations, and Paracity is mostly useful against the Sigilai, but also like in a lot of other random situations. So I don't know, would have to test it more. Both are definitely solid choices. But I think Paracity is not necessary, but a good option.
Yeah. Tord, any other thoughts?
Benjamin played one of my newest lists at Memphis Regional and made top 8. And his deck list featured Parallel and Diva Soda. So I definitely think those are good inclusions. And yeah, people should test them out more.
Yep. Joe's just nodding.
That's the proof right there.
Yeah.
Mid top 8.
Tord said, I'm putting them in a list, and off it goes the top 8. Good cards.
Wouldn't Benjamin say so, then
he said he lost his top 8 match because he priced Mewtwo both games against Baswell Lysenrock, so that's
could have gone further.
Must be pretty rough.
Yeah.
But I still believe Zoro Gole is pretty good.
Okay, just trying to find the next set of questions.
I missed your opinion on Zoro Lycanroc. Do you think it's like way worse than Pod, or do you think they're both like definitely top tier decks?
Oh, it's not. Oh, yeah, we wasn't there. It's not way worse at all, but it's.
It plays quite differently.
Yeah, it plays quite differently, but still a really good deck because it uses basically the same engine as the Zoro Gole list, and yeah, you just have different game plan, right? And you have some different matchups. Your matchups are not spread as well as Golisopod, so you have some matchups that are much better, and you have some matchups that are much worse, like Bulo and Greninja, as examples.
Yeah.
So just it's more like a meta predicament deck, but it's also a lot easier to play as well. So that's super tempting for all the players, I guess, because you don't have to plan for a long game because the game goes really, really fast. You just try to be more aggressive. So much easier to pick up, and you can definitely see the temptation in that.
Yeah,
Cool. So I think this next question is very much dependent on the deck that you're teching out. But if you had to tech against Buzzwole in your deck, would you prefer to play the Mewtwo from Evo, or would you prefer to play a copy of Mew EX? I guess it depends. If you have basic attackers that you want to copy the attacks of, go ahead and play the Mew, right? Because it's 2 prizes, but you probably take more prizes with it. Anyone?
In Zoroark Golisopod, I would still play the Mewtwo, I think, because you really only need an answer against the Buzzwole with the free energy, and Mewtwo does that fine. I think in the Lycanroc, I would probably play Mew because you want to be more aggressive and just take the first few knockouts, and then Mew can do that, just copyright his speeding, and Mewtwo is more reactive and Mew proactive, I guess. I think Mew fits quite well into the Zoroark Lycanroc.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's a lot of nodding your heads then. Just like, that's it.
Robin is on point.
Yes. Okay.
Shout out to Latios as well. If you play 4 choice bands and Kukuis, oh yes. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I think I can't see any more questions. So I think that means we can wrap it up there. So thank you all very much for coming on. I'm guessing everyone wants to do shout-outs. So we can go around and do those. So we'll start with Tord.
Thanks for watching, guys. See ya at the next tournament.
You're not going to plug teams or Twitch or Twitter or anything?
Shout out to Planet and follow me on Twitter at Reklev.
There we go. This is the bit that is like quick. You get free promotions now. Okay, so Robin.
Shout outs to Limitless, of course. Yeah, and follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Philip's in chat, just taking the mick out of us. So
Shout out to everyone.
Yeah, cool. Joe?
Shout out to CCG, the statistically best European team, as proven by the Limitless website. That's brilliant.
Only of the current season.
Shout out to Team Omnipoke and all that good stuff. And shout out to Europe having different time zones to us. Whoops.
Yeah, so yeah, just to let everyone know that what happened there was, I'm not, I might be British, but I'm not currently living in the UK. So when we were organising this, it was like, right, cool, we'll do it at 7 European time, right? Because 3 of us are in European. Joe did what every British person does, because I've done the same thing, going the other way of going 7. That'll do.
That's the number I saw. So.
Yeah. Cool.
I was early.
Okay. And a shout out to the Team Manchester guys. This is actually the launch of our new Twitch, so I think we've got a pretty good set of guests on for our launch. Few teething problems, but hopefully they'll go away. Most of us are going to be at Leipzig, and we'll be wearing our very largely branded t-shirts with our brand new mats that arrived. So come say hi, and we'll hopefully get some more content out to you soon. So thank you very much for watching, and maybe we'll get one for the next big tournament.